Dear friends and colleagues, on behalf of the Hamad Party in Europe, I'm deeply touched and honored to be invited to such a gathering to give voice to the suffering people of Afghanistan and share a small part of the grief that millions of Afghans suffer. Afghanistan has only known wars, military invasions, destruction, destitution, and misery over the past 3 decades. Today it is once again a battlefield among powers vying for influence in the heart of Asia. The game masters have continued to create victims of oppressors, victors, terrorists, peace-loving dictators and masters, each group changing rules as the rule of the game changes. Over the past 3 decades, neither the creators nor the created have changed, but just the rules they play. The same characters were once allies, freedom fighters, democratic-minded and moderates. With the time, the same characters are enemies, terrorists, fanatics, and downright monsters. Such changes in the rules of the game in the Afghan amphitheater have cost hundreds and thousands of lives, dignity, and basic human rights. Let's not forget the disastrous adventurism of the Soviet leadership in late 1970s, which killed directly and through its installed puppet regime nearly 2 million people and permanently maimed another 2 to 4 million people out of an estimated population of about 18 million at the time. The Soviet invasion in a more than a decade-long occupation was the source of miseries in the subsequent years. In the past 9 years, the occupation forces led by the US made fool of the world by asserting that they are there to bring peace, democracy, and freedom to Afghan people. But, in fact, it is nothing other than a cynical excuse for strategic, economic, and military interest, once again at the expense of ordinary Afghans. The US and NATO claim that they are fighting terrorism, but in fact, they themselves are terrorizing our people through their bombings and use of dangerous weapons. Most of the people they fight today are their own creation and once hailed as the best allies the US can have. The installed puppet regime is nothing other than a junior lieutenant whose only job is to follow certain minor instructions. The regime's allies, friends, and foes are already defined, and there is little room for dissent from the game master's official line. Today, the best friends of the US and NATO in Afghanistan are warlords and drug lords like Abdul Rasul Sayyaf, Karim Khalili, Qasim Fahim, Dr. Abdullah Burhanuddin Rabbani, Muhammad Muhakkik, Atta Muhammad, and many other such murderers and dark-minded individuals and groups who have a long history of human rights violations and atrocities against defenseless people of Afghanistan. There are claims of positive changes in Afghanistan since the US and NATO invasion. Let's just a few. 1. Afghanistan produces over 90% of world opium and has become a major hub of international drug mafia activities. 2. Afghanistan is the second most corrupt country in the world, where billions of dollars of aid are being looted by the warlords, ministers, national and international NGOs. The foreign troops themselves are engaged in the drug trafficking and corruption, which has made the life of ordinary Afghans bleak and unbearable. 3. The UN estimates that 7.4 billion people, or more than a third of the population, do not eat more than one meal a day. Another 8.5 million people, or 37% of the population, are seasonally hungry. 4. Malnutrition is the highest in the world. 5. Access to education, in particular for women, is the lowest in the world. 6. Maternity death rates are the highest in the world, and so on. On the other hand, however, fancy large castles have sprung up in various parts of the country. Individuals owning private jets, airlines, banks, and large properties in different parts of the world. These are not just any individuals. Indeed, they are the empire's chosen ones. They are the new faces of democracy and social justice, some of whom were at some point considered terrorists. While the game masters choose players and designate the good and the bad and continuously change functions and stands of identity, the ordinary Afghans are caught in between and have their share of and continue to suffer. The U.S. is not alone in the feast. Of course, minor regional lieutenants also have their share of the feast. The Taliban and the Hikmatyar groups were once created and heavily supported by the U.S. and its allies, but somehow upset the master in the rules of the game at this change. Iran, Pakistan, and some Arab governments have been heavily involved in supporting and nurturing one or another group. Without the support from Pakistan, Iran, and a number of other countries, the Taliban and Hikmatyar groups could not survive that many years at all. It is indeed shocking to hear and see that some so-called progressive and even left groups in the U.S. and European countries regard Taliban as anti-imperialist forces and see them as national movements against occupation. They forget that the Taliban and Al-Qaeda both are reactionary and terrorist groups created by the U.S. They have links with international terrorism and are supported by fundamentalist and fascist regimes such as Pakistan and Iran. They do not represent Afghan people, and their war is mainly against our innocent people. Existence of such brutal and ignorant groups gives a golden opportunity to the U.S. and NATO to hold its grip on Afghanistan and keep their military bases and presence as part of the empire's long-arm strategy. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, the U.S. has become the sole superpower. To keep her position, they fight their potential enemies on all grounds in order to secure its political, economical, geostrategic, and hegemonic interests. The so-called anti-American groups in Afghanistan are needed as a prime excuse for the U.S. to exert control in the heart of Asia. The so-called new strategy of Obama for Afghanistan in increasing troops has already turned the Afghan tragedy into disaster. The number of innocent Afghan civilians killed by NATO is growing. The U.S. starts a war on terror, but tries to make comfortable bedfellows with Taliban and Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. The U.S. puppet regime of Hamid Karzai created a so-called Peace Council in order to share power with those savage groups. If they join the government, the Afghans will be destined to be driven to the dark ages. Such coalition will be like unity of wolves and vultures who jointly tear our unfortunate nation apart. Indeed, the chosen members of the Peace Council are former friends of the Taliban, and ideologically there is no difference between them. Hence, the future state of affairs has already been drafted. Respected friends, the U.S. NATO governments talk about democracy, but act principally against democracy and justice. They waste the taxpayers' money in blood of your sons for a war which is neither in the benefit of Afghans nor Western people. In the past 9 years, they armed and empowered the most dangerous reactionary fundamentalist groups in Afghanistan because they know that only such groups will better serve their interests in Afghanistan. The U.S. NATO tried to block any option for emergence of progressive and democratic-minded movements in Afghanistan because such movements will never dance to the tunes of the empire. They are busy in seeding ethnic, lingual, religious, and regional conflicts, which may necessitate the presence of foreign powers for years to come. We think neither the U.S., NATO, nor reactionary fundamentalist groups such as Taliban will bring peace, justice, and democracy for Afghanistan. Only Afghan people themselves can liberate Afghanistan if they are united under the banner of a progressive and independent movement. We have individuals and small groups working towards this very vital goal. While progressive and democratic groups are under constant pressure from all sides and are being ignored, but there are many individuals like Malala Yousafzai who have committed herself to rise against occupation and fundamentalism and mobilize poor masses of Afghanistan for a decisive fight for independence, justice, and democracy in our country.